Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into a case with a really tragic update out of Escambia County, Florida.
Yeah, the news came out, right? A private investigator missing for over a month.
Exactly. And then her body was found and her friend was charged with murder.
It's set in Pensacola, which, people think of as this beautiful vacation spot.
Right, beaches, the Blue Angels, Naval Air Station, all that.
But like any city, it has its darker side, its tragedies.
And the victim here was Taylor Wright. She was 33, a former police officer who'd become a PI. And importantly, she was a mother, had an 8-year-old son.
And you've given us this whole stack of materials to dig into for this deep dive.
Yeah.
We're talking details, interview excerpts, court testimony, police reports. It's all centered around Taylor Wright's disappearance and ultimately her murder.
So what's our goal here today?
Well, our mission is to guide you, the listener, through these sources. We want to pull out the key insights, understand the layers. It's a complex case.
And focus on how the investigation pieced it together.
It's exactly how they sorted through conflicting stories and how the evidence, a lot of it circumstantial, actually built up this case that led to a conviction.
Okay, so this is your deep dive based on the sources you gave us. Let's get into it. Let's explore what these sources say happened.
Right.
So the sources talk about Taylor Wright's life leading up to this. She'd moved to Pensacola after a difficult divorce. And there, she met someone new, Cassandra Waller. She was a public school administrator.
Met online, right?
Yeah, met online. And even though the relationship was pretty new, Cassandra described having, real feelings for Taylor. Taylor eventually moved in with her.
And how did Cassandra describe Taylor?
She said Taylor was kind, really outgoing, just full of life and energy. Someone with big ideas.
But what's interesting, and the sources point this out early on, alongside that energy, there were some pretty significant issues in Taylor's life then.
Like what?
Well, her girlfriend, Cassandra, she suspected Taylor might be using drugs. And she'd also found out Taylor was cheating on her with another woman.
Wow. Okay, so that's complicated. And then there was the divorce itself, right? Still ongoing with her ex-husband, Jeff Wright.
Very contentious, yeah. And the big issue, according to the sources, was money.
Money? How so?
Specifically, Taylor had taken out a huge sum, $100,000, from a joint account.
And that was against court orders.
A direct violation, yeah, in the divorce proceedings.
Okay, so that's serious trouble.
And this is where another person comes into the picture, Ashley MacArthur, another new friend Taylor made in Florida.
Right, Ashley MacArthur. How does she fit in?
Taylor asked Ashley to help her hide this money. Like basically put it in Ashley's bank account to keep it safe or hidden for the divorce proceedings. Yeah. And this became absolutely critical because the judge in the divorce case ordered Taylor to produce that $100,000.
Or face jail time.
Yeah. So you can just imagine the immense pressure Taylor was under to get that money back from Ashley.
Absolutely. And Cassandra's account of the night before Taylor disappeared, it really highlights that pressure.
What did she say?
They went out for dinner, and Cassandra said Taylor was just incredibly stressed about needing the money back from Ashley.
Did she say why Ashley hadn't given it back yet?
Not exactly, but Taylor apparently told Cassandra she felt awkward asking for it. Like she sensed something wasn't quite right about the situation.
That's telling.
So fast forward to September 8, 2017. This is the last day anyone saw Taylor alive.
Okay.
Cassandra testified she saw Taylor that morning right in her driveway. Ashley MacArthur drove up.
Okay, so Ashley arrived at Cassandra's house.
Yeah. Cassandra said a quick hello to Ashley, wished them a good day, and then she left for work.
And what was the plan for Taylor and Ashley that day?
The plan, as Cassandra understood it from Taylor, was that they were going to a Wells Fargo bank in Pensacola.
To get the money.
Exactly. For Taylor to finally get that $100,000 back from Ashley, that was the stated goal.
Okay. But that's not what Ashley said happened, right?
Not at all. Just a few hours later, Ashley calls Cassandra, and her story about that morning, completely different.
How so?
Ashley told Cassandra they didn't go to the bank. No bank. So where did they go?
She claimed they drove way out of town to Ashley's family's horse farm in a place called East Milton.
East Milton? Why? What was the reason she gave?
Ashley said Taylor was feeling emotional and stressed about her divorce and just needed to get away for a bit.
Okay, wait. So the plan was the bank. Taylor was stressed about getting the money, and Ashley claims they just ditched that plan and drove like 30 miles out of town to a farm instead.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty major shift, doesn't it?
It really does. That feels off.
It is, and it's one of those first inconsistencies that, later becomes really significant in the investigation.
And the story kept getting weirder, right? The text message.
Oh yeah. Later that night, Cassandra gets a text from Taylor's phone.
But it wasn't typical Taylor.
Not really. It was kind of odd. An apology, saying something like, "I'm not doing anything wrong."
How did Cassandra take that?
Well, initially she misinterpreted it. Because of the cheating, she thought maybe Taylor was leaving her for someone else.
Ah, okay. So she was angry at first.
Angry and upset, yeah, rather than immediately worried that something bad had happened.
I can see how that text, given the context, would be confusing.
Definitely. But then, days started passing. A week went by. Still no word from Taylor.
And that's when the worry really set in for Cassandra.
Absolutely. She tried calling, texting, nothing. Just silence.
So she contacted the police.
That's right. And this is where the sources say things took a turn pretty quickly. What started as a standard missing person report almost immediately took on an ominous cast.
Meaning the detectives suspected foul play early on.
Yeah, detectives Chad Wilhite and Richard Gagliotti apparently treated it as a potential homicide very, very early in the investigation. The circumstances just raised immediate red flags for them.
Right. And standard procedure, I guess. Everyone's a suspect initially.
Pretty much. Anyone connected to Taylor. So that included her ex-husband, Jeff Wright.
And her girlfriend, Cassandra Waller.
Yep. Both were looked at initially.
And the sources described those early interactions with Cassandra, right? Detectives at her house.
Yeah, they questioned her intensely. Detective Gigliotti even crawled under her house at one point.
Crawled under the house? Looking for what?
Who knows, really? But Cassandra later testified she felt really pressured, kind of scared during that question.
Even though the goal was just to find Taylor.
Well, that was the stated goal, yeah. But you can imagine how intense that must have felt. They weren't accusing her yet, but the pressure was on.
Okay, so then naturally they bring in Ashley MacArthur.
Of course. She was the last known person to see Taylor alive.
And her first interview. How did she come across?
It's described in the sources as, well, surprisingly cooperative. Even maybe a little flirty, maybe a little playful.
Flirty? With detectives investigating her friend's disappearance?
Yeah, that's how it was characterized. And she offered up different ideas for where Taylor might be.
Like what?
Like maybe Taylor was on a drug binge somewhere? Or maybe she'd just taken off with all that cash.
Trying to deflect suspicion, maybe?
Could be. But here's the critical part. She specifically denied having a safety deposit box for Taylor, or any account at Wells Fargo with Taylor's money in it.
But wait, Taylor's text and Cassandra's understanding were all about getting money from Ashley at Wells Fargo.
Exactly. So this was a direct contradiction, a major lie right at the start about the very thing Taylor was supposedly so stressed about.
Wow. Okay, so she's lying about the money from the get-go. What else? The gas station?
Yeah, the gas station footage.
Yeah.
They found surveillance video from a gas station near where they were supposedly heading to the bank.
And Ashley was on it.
Yes. Ashley claimed they stopped there around 10 a.m. so Taylor could buy a beer.
Our beer! At 10 a.m., Cassandra found that weird, right?
Yeah, Cassandra said that was really out of character for Taylor. And Ashley's response, when detectives apparently questioned her about it,
What'd she say?
something like, well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Huh. That just sounds evasive. Flippant, even.
It adds to that feeling, right? And then Ashley made another really key claim. She said after the supposed visit to the horse farm.
The farm they likely never went to.
Right. She claimed she dropped Taylor off back at home, and that Taylor then called an Uber.
Okay, an Uber. That's something detectives could check.
And they did. Crucially, they checked Taylor's Uber account. It hadn't been used in months.
Months. So another verifiable lie.
A huge one. This wasn't just a minor detail being wrong. For the investigators, this is a massive red flag. It solidified that feeling that, as the sources put it, something was definitely wrong. Ashley's story wasn't holding up.
Okay, so her stories are falling apart. And this is where the technology really comes in, isn't it? This becomes a huge turning point.
Absolutely huge.
Right.
The cell phone tower records.
Can you just briefly explain how that works? Why was it so powerful here?
Sure. So basically, your cell phone is always talking to nearby cell towers, right? It pings them to get a signal.
Okay.
And the phone companies keep logs of which towers your specific phone connects with and when.
So they can track general location based on tower connections.
Exactly. And when detectives got this data for Ashley MacArthur's phone for September 8th, 2017, well, it just completely demolished her story.
How so?
The data showed, unequivocally, that Ashley and Taylor never went to that family horse farm in East Milton that day.
Never at all.
Not even close. The phone data proved she wasn't there. This wasn't just a little inconsistency. The sources emphasized this was a very big deal.
So her whole alibi for a large part of that day just gone, blown apart by the cell data.
Completely. And instead of putting her phone anywhere near East Milton,
Where did the data show her phone was?
it placed her phone about 30 miles away, actually, in the northwest part of Escambia County.
Okay, Northwest County, not East Milton. That's specific.
Very specific. And this led to what one investigator called a good moment. Detective Alberton had this smart idea.
What was it?
He decided to check the county property appraiser's website, but using Ashley's maiden name, which was Brett.
Ah, looking for property owned by her family, maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that search hit pay dirt. It led them to an address. 2021 Britt Road.
And Britt Road was?
It was located, according to the detective, right in the middle of all that data from Ashley's cell phone pings on the day Taylor disappeared.
Wow. So the cell data not only proved she lied about the farm, but it pointed them to a specific different location connected to her family name.
Precisely. That piece of information, combined with the phone data destroying her alibi, really solidified their suspicion. They were becoming increasingly certain Ashley was involved.
So now they have her lying about her location and cell data putting her phone at the specific Britt Road property that day. How did that fit with the other evidence they were finding?
It started to make everything click into place. They already had bank records, remember?
Showing Ashley depositing checks.
Yes, large checks from Taylor's account, deposited after Taylor was already missing.
And they had video of her doing it.
Bank surveillance footage of Ashley physically making those deposits. And on top of that, they got confirmation about the signatures.
What about them?
Handwriting analysis confirmed the signatures on those checks Ashley deposited were definitely not Taylor Wright's.
Gorge.
They were forged.
Okay, so forged checks, lying about her location, cell data, placing her at this Britt Road property. The picture is getting clearer, but darker.
It is. And the sources mentioned there was this sensitive element complicating things slightly.
Oh, what's that?
Ashley's husband, Zach, he was a former sheriff's deputy.
Ah, so he knew people in local law enforcement.
Yeah, apparently quite well.
Yeah.
So the detectives had to be incredibly careful, keep their suspicions really quiet for a while. They didn't want anything leaking out that could jeopardize the investigation.
Makes sense. Okay, so they're building this case circumstantially, which brings up the big question.
The motive. Why?
Exactly. Why would Ashley MacArthur allegedly do this? What was the reason?
Well, the prosecution's theory, which they built throughout the case based on all this evidence, was pretty straightforward. It was about the money.
The $100,000.
Yes. Ashley couldn't give Taylor the money back when Taylor needed it because she'd already spent it.
Spent it? On what? The sources mention an affair.
They do. According to testimony and evidence presented, she was allegedly spending that money, Taylor's money, on a man she was having an extramarital affair with,
Who was he?
a local bar owner named Brandon Bay.
And he testified.
He did. He testified in court, confirmed they were having a sexual relationship.
And confirmed the spending.
Yeah, he described Ashley spending, like, significant amounts of cash on him.
What kind of things?
Things like buying a boat, using $30,000 in cash, paying his bills, buying supplies for his bar, even buying him a motorcycle just weeks before Taylor disappeared.
Wow. That's lavish. Did he say how much total?
He was apparently quite evasive when the prosecutor pressed him on exact amounts and how often. Just said he, didn't know how to answer that.
Okay. And did Bay say anything about Ashley mentioning Taylor's disappearance?
Yes. And this is really chilling. He recounted a conversation where Ashley told him about Taylor being missing.
What did she say?
She allegedly told him Taylor had ran off with her husband's money or something and just gone.
Okay, trying to plant that runaway story?
Right. But then, according to Bay, she added this horrifying line. They'll never find that bitch, she's gone.
Oh my God. They'll never find that bitch. If true, that's incredibly damning.
Incredibly. And it wasn't isolated. There was other testimony suggesting Ashley had expressed ill will towards Taylor before she vanished.
From who? Her friends?
Yeah. Testimony came out in court from some of Ashley's own girlfriends and even a bartender.
What did they claim?
They claimed Ashley had talked about wanting to harm Taylor. One woman testified, Ashley said the world would be better off without Taylor, that she wasn't a good person.
Wow. And another witness mentioned something specific about how she planned to do it.
Yes, another witness claimed Ashley had talked specifically about killing Taylor with a cocaine overdose. That she'd even bought cocaine for that purpose.
Cocaine overdose. And was there testimony she actually tried it?
Shockingly, yes. Testimony was presented alleging that Ashley admitted putting cocaine in Taylor's beer the night Taylor went missing.
But it didn't work.
Apparently, Taylor spit the beer out because it tasted sour. That's what the testimony claimed.
Unbelievable. So you've got the forged checks, the cell data lies, the Britt Road location, the motive spent money, the affair, these alleged threats, the cocaine story.
It's a mountain of circumstantial evidence pointing in one direction.
So the investigators decide it's time. Bring Ashley in again.
Right. A second interview. They knew this was probably their last shot before executing search warrants, particularly at that Britt Road property.
How did that interview go down? What was the scene like?
Sources describe it. They read Ashley her Miranda rights. Detectives Wilhite and Gigliotti were there. Feels like they employed a bit of a good cop, bad cop dynamic.
Okay. And they confronted her with the evidence.
Immediately, Detective Wilhite, playing the more direct role, confronted her straight up with the cell tower data, showed her the proof she lied about going to East Milton.
How did Ashley react to that? Did she stick to her story?
She tried, initially. But when they actually showed her the phone data, the maps showing she was miles away, her whole demeanor changed.
Changed how?
She reportedly got very closed off, physically turning away from the detective. Crossed her arms, crossed her legs, defensive posture.
Did the detective call her out on that?
He did. Will had testified he actually told her to uncross her legs and look at him, trying to break through that defensiveness.
Intense. And then they pushed her on the Britt Road farm.
Yeah, they went right at it. They made it crystal clear. We know you were there.
Did she finally admit it?
She did, finally. She admitted being at Britt Road that day. But she came up with this explanation.
What was it this time?
She claimed they only went there briefly to pick up a lockbox. Something Taylor wanted kept secret.
A secret lockbox. After all this time, that's the explanation. How did the detective react?
With skepticism, according to the sources. Like, why would this detail, picking up some secret box, be something you conveniently forgot to mention during a missing person investigation for your friend? It seemed weak.
The tension must have been through the roof at this point.
You have to imagine. The detective kept pressing her, harder now. Where's Taylor at? You need to tell us where she's at.
And Ashley's response?
Still denying. I don't know where she is. Just stick into that.
That's when they dropped the bomb about the search warrant.
Yeah, that was the final move in the interview. The detective revealed that search teams were executing a search warrant at the Britt Road farm at that very moment.
Wow. How did Ashley react to that?
Her response was chilling. According to testimony, she said something like, "That's funny, but she's not going to be there."
That's funny. She's not going to be there. Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And that was pretty much the end of the interview.
How did it end?
Detective Wilhite then stated it plainly, looking right at her. She's dead, though. You know that.
Just laid it out there.
Yep. Then gave her the standard options. Tell us what happened or ask for your attorney.
And she asked for an attorney.
She did. Which, legally, meant the detectives had to stop all questioning immediately and let her leave.
So she walked out of the police station.
She walked out.
But the search was ongoing at Britt Road. And the timing here is just crucial and so heartbreaking.
It really is. Within about an hour, maybe 2 hours, after Ashley MacArthur walked out of that interview room,
the search teams found something.
They did. At the Britt Road property, they made a grim discovery. They found human remains. A skull was located first.
And they knew immediately.
Given the location, the context of the investigation, everything pointing to Britt Road, there was immediate certainty. This had to be Taylor Wright. The details that came out later described in the sources. They're tough.
Where exactly was the body found?
In a shallow grave, right there on the Britt Road family farm property. The same property her cell data placed her at on the day she vanished.
And it was covered
with concrete and potting soil, just as the later Home Depot receipts would suggest.
And the cause of death?
The medical examiner confirmed she'd been shot. Once, in the back of the head.
So, with the body found where the cell data put her, the motive, the lies, the forged checks, the alleged threats.
The circumstantial evidence was overwhelming. Ashley MacArthur was arrested and charged with murder.
Which leads us to the trial. The state of Florida versus Ashley MacArthur, charged with first-degree premeditated murder.
Right, and it was a high-profile trial. Sources mentioned cameras were in the courtroom, LA Network, Crime Network, lots of media attention.
So the prosecution, what was their strategy? How did they open?
The prosecution, led by Richard Jensen, they kind of acknowledged up front in their opening statement that Ashley might not look like a killer.
How so?
They described her as seeming meek, quiet, someone who'd never been in trouble, making it maybe hard for the jury initially to picture her doing something so violent.
Setting the stage, then countering it.
Exactly. Then they laid out their case very clearly. Ashley had the motive, the money she owed and had spent. She had the opportunity. She was the last one seen with Taylor. She killed Taylor, and then she covered it all up.
Okay. And the defense, led by Barry Barrett. What was their angle?
Their strategy, right from the opening, was to hammer on the lack of direct physical evidence.
No smoking gun.
Basically, they told the jury, the state has no physical evidence, no forensics linking Ashley directly, no eyewitness to the actual killing, no murder weapon found.
So their whole case was built on reasonable doubt.
Precisely. If they could plant that seed of doubt because of the lack of direct linkage, they hoped for an acquittal.
And the trial unfolded with key witnesses. Jeff Wright, the ex-husband.
He was called by the prosecution mostly to eliminate him as a suspect. But the defense definitely used his time on the stand to bring up those money arguments he had with Taylor, maybe trying to suggest he had a motive.
And Cassandra Waller, the girlfriend.
She testified, identified Ashley in court. Crucially, she testified about knowing Taylor's handwriting well and confirming those deposited checks were absolutely not signed by Taylor.
How did the defense handle her?
They cross-examined her about her own relationship with Taylor, pointing out it was volatile, mentioning angry texts Cassandra had sent. Maybe trying to subtly paint a picture where Taylor might have just chosen to disappear because of relationship drama.
And the jury heard about the alleged threats Ashley made, the cocaine poisoning attempt.
Yes, testimony about all of that was presented. And Brandon Bay, the man she had the affair with, testified about the relationship and Ashley spending all that money on him.
So the jury got the full picture, the cell tower maps showing Ashley at Britt Road, the bank videos of her depositing forged checks, the testimony about threats, the affair, the spending.
All building that circumstantial case piece by piece, along with those suspicious texts sent from Taylor's phone after she was likely already dead.
And there was that added drama during the trial itself, right? The hurricane.
Yeah, reports mentioned hurricane was bearing down on the area, which apparently put some pressure on the court to try and speed things up if possible.
But despite that pressure, the prosecution made a pretty bold move with Ashley's police interviews.
They did. They decided to play the entire 6 hours of both of Ashley's interviews for the jury.
6 hours? Why do that? What was the strategic value?
It was incredibly important, actually. It let the jury see Ashley's demeanor firsthand. See that shift.
The shift from the first interview to the second.
Exactly. That initial flirty, maybe playful behavior in the first one, compared to how she became defensive, closed off, probably caught, as one source put it, in the second interview, when confronted with the cell data and her lies.
The jury could literally watch her getting caught in lies and struggling.
Yes. See her squirm, try to come up with excuses. It showed her lack of honesty unfolding in real time.
And then came the Home Depot evidence, the surveillance video.
Right. This seemed like slam dunk evidence for the prosecution initially. The video showed Ashley buying bags of concrete and potting soil the day after Taylor went missing.
Directly linking her to the materials used to cover the grave.
That's what it looked like. It felt like a really strong piece connecting her directly to the cover-up.
But the defense found an opening here, a twist.
A big one. Described as a potential boom moment for the defense case. They called the store clerk who actually helped Ashley that day, Devontae Sim.
And what did he say?
He testified, and he remembered helping her buy fast-setting concrete. He described it very specifically as being like a fine dust.
Okay, fine dust, how is that different?
Well, the crime scene photos of the concrete found covering Taylor's body showed something different. That concrete was described as very pebbly, rocky, not fine dust at all.
So the clerk's description of what she bought didn't match the concrete found at the scene.
Exactly. This created a direct piece of physical evidence suggesting maybe the concrete used at the grave wasn't the concrete Ashley bought at Home Depot that day. It potentially created that reasonable doubt the defense needed.
That's fascinating. A real potential crack in the prosecution's link. Did the defense have other points? Something about her physical ability?
Yeah. They also argued Ashley couldn't have physically done it. They claimed she couldn't have lifted a 50-pound bag of concrete, let alone Taylor's body, because of a back injury she'd suffered years before.
And they had someone testify to that.
Her mother testified, supporting that claim, saying Ashley always avoided lifting heavy things because it caused her pain.
Okay, so the defense has these points. No direct physical link, the concrete discrepancy, the physical capability question. How did the prosecution wrap things up in their closing?
They delivered a really powerful closing argument. They started by acknowledging that, some unflattering things had come out about Taylor Wright during the trial. The relationship issues, the money stuff.
That didn't matter.
Their point was, she was still the victim, a human being whose life was taken, whose life mattered, regardless of her flaws.
And they contrasted that with Ashley.
Starkly. They pointed back to Ashley's calm, cool, collected demeanor in those police interviews, giggling and joking sometimes while her friend was supposedly missing. They contrasted that with her outright lies about the money, about her location at Britt Road.
Hammering home the core argument.
Exactly. Ashley had the motive, the money. She had the opportunity last person with Taylor. She murdered Taylor at that Britt Road farm. And she tried to cover it all up with lies. And yes, with concrete and potting soil, even if the defense quibbled about which concrete.
And the defense's closing, what was their final pitch to the jury?
They circled right back to their main theme. Lack of direct physical evidence, no DNA, no trace evidence linking Ashley to the killing itself.
Reasonable doubt again.
All about reasonable doubt. They argued her demeanor in those videos didn't look like someone who just killed a friend and hidden a body. And they highlighted that Home Depot concrete testimony from the clerk as the key piece of physical evidence that should make the jury doubt the prosecution's story. They asked for a not guilty verdict.
So argument's done, the jury goes out. How long did they take?
The sources say about 4 hours, which, when you're waiting in that courtroom, must feel like an absolute eternity.
Yeah, I can only imagine the tension. The judge warned people to keep it together.
Reportedly warned everyone in the courtroom beforehand to control their emotions no matter what the verdict was.
And then, the moment came. The verdict was ready.
Yeah. The clerk stood up to read the formal charge against Ashley MacArthur, and then the finding.
And the verdict was?
The jury found the defendant, Ashley MacArthur, guilty. Guilty of first-degree premeditated murder with a firearm, exactly as the state had charged her.
Guilty? How did people react? Cassandra Waller.
The sources describe Cassandra visibly trying to hold back tears, fighting her emotions as the verdict was read. A huge release, I imagine.
And sentencing. Did it happen right away?
Yes. The judge moved immediately to sentencing. Ashley MacArthur was formally adjudicated guilty.
And a sentence?
Life in state prison, with a mandatory minimum sentence of 25 years before any possibility of parole.
So life.
Life. And as your source material concludes, after 2 long years, the case was finally considered closed. Justice, as the court saw it, was served. She'll spend the rest of her life behind bars.
So looking back at this deep dive, what does it all really mean? We went through the sources you gave us, and it reveals this powerful story, doesn't it? How an investigation meticulously unraveled this web of lies spun by someone who seemed cooperative at first.
Yeah, and it highlights how critical that detective work was, especially when direct physical evidence linking her to the act was limited.
Driven by money, it seems, and exposed by technology.
The financial motive seems key, the money she'd spent. And that cell tower data was just undeniable. It completely broke her alibi.
What's really fascinating, though, is how they built that case.
It's exactly that point. It was entirely circumstantial, right? But they had to connect so many different dots.
Like what? Remind us.
You had the financial records, the forged checks, the proof of her spending on the affair. You had the phone pings dismantling her story and placing her near the Britt Road property. You had witness accounts of her alleged threats.
The purchase of the concrete and soil, even with the defense's challenge.
Right. It all had to be woven together. Bank records, phone data, witness testimony, building it layer by layer to overcome that lack of, say, DNA evidence directly on her person from the crime scene itself.
It really shows how investigations work sometimes, connecting those disparate pieces.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on, drawing from everything we've explored in these sources. Think about that contrast. Ashley MacArthur's initial demeanor with the police described as flirty, playful, almost putting on an act. Contrast that with the brutal, violent act she was ultimately convicted of.
It's a stark difference.
What does that disparity tell us, maybe, about the masks people can wear? And how incredibly crucial it is not just for police, but maybe for all of us as we navigate the world and process information to look past the surface.
And follow the evidence.
And follow where the actual evidence, like that cold, hard cell phone data, truly leads, even if it leads somewhere unexpected or uncomfortable.
A really important point.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive today. We hope you'll take some time to reflect on this case, the complexities and the details we uncovered from the sources you provided.